All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started then. Welcome everybody, thanks for coming. So as you can see by the title, we're gonna be talking about the test tool updates that we've been doing over the last few months. During the course of this presentation, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A option on Zoom, so feel free to add anything there and we'll have some people answering that as well. But we'll also have a session at the end just to ask any questions and answer them live too. All right, so this is Carter Snaith speaking. I've been working at the lab for about 6 years. They can't get rid of me. I started as a student working in SCSI testing and then moved over to NVMe. I've been managing the testing efforts for private reservations, maintaining the integrators list, and in general just doing a lot of customer correspondence when there's questions or bugs or anything of that sort. And then I'm also starting to manage a new support portal through Jira Service Management that we'll talk about later on in this presentation.
And then I'm James Kahn. I'm also a technical manager that works with Carter. I work on the software side mostly as the development lead and leading the development team through our test plans and actually developing our tool. And I've been working here at the IOL and NVMe technology a little bit shorter than Carter, but at 4 years. So I've had pretty decent experience in it.
All right. So just a brief overview, we know what we're talking about, our introductions, which we're kind of doing right now. We'll go over the IOL in case people are unfamiliar or need a little bit of a refresher. We'll talk about conformance testing with Interact, and then we'll go over the actual updates, which is the main meat of this presentation, and then upcoming events. And like I said, we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this. All right, so just some basic information about our organization for those who may be unfamiliar with us. Sorry, it's a bit redundant for anyone who knows already, but I figured it's a good refresher anyways. So as the name suggests for UNH IOL, we are under the University of New Hampshire. So as a result, our primary workforce, which is those who are running testing, developing scripts, putting hardware together, building things, and interacting with vendors, are young engineers in training or just young engineers, learning the ropes, building new connections, which is a great thing for them to get involved in this technology to get started. It's also helpful for everyone just to get new experience and make new connections. Of course, with learning, there are sometimes mistakes made, but those are alleviated by the full-time staff management of people like myself and James, and we have other engineers in the organization who are members of big, large standards bodies, so kind of guiding it through that. Our whole organization, we have testing and development that covers data centers, embedded systems, baseband, IP, DSL, open source, plenty of things, all through third-party neutrality. So you might even see a lot of people in your standards body meetings at the end that say UNH IOL, because we're always attending them and trying to learn new things and figure out the direction of the standards so we can make sure we have adequate testing when it comes out. But for NVMe specifically in our group data center, we've been testing NVMe for the NVMe org since 2013, which was when I was a freshman in high school. And we've been doing it ever since. Now it being 2023, means we're coming up right on 10 years of NVMe testing at the UNH IOL. So it's a project that I got to hop on about halfway through. And it's even for my 6 years, it's great to see how much it's grown since then, and good to see where it's going from here. Also, we are in New Hampshire. I just wanted to include this. I thought it was a good picture to indicate the weather we have here, since some of you may have been here, some of you may have not. Yeah, the weather changes week by week, and of course this means there's snowbanks outside that are taller than us, me and James combined. But thankfully, by the time we have our next Plugfest, this will be gone. It'll be really warm, and I'll probably be complaining that it's too hot at that point instead of complaining about the snow. Okay, a little bit more background. So beyond being a major third-party test facility under University of New Hampshire, we more specifically have test vendor devices at various stages of the development cycle across all the industries I mentioned before and more. This is important because it facilitates good early testing prior to mass production, so we can catch potential firmware and hardware faults before it's all being taped out and going out everywhere and potentially costing millions and billions of dollars and causing lots of problems. So it's a pretty good environment to get interoperability done prior to that. We host multi-vendor events called Plugfests in a big room up front in our lab, which allows for live interoperability and conformance testing on the latest products before release, and it also facilitates discussions between people who are normally competitors and colleagues alike that will eventually allow for a better end product for both ourselves and for the end users. I mentioned before that we are always attending standards bodies to gain knowledge on new technologies and to determine where testing needs to be implemented, given our past experience that we've been around for 30 years. So we have got a lot of technologies under our belts and lots of brain power here to find out what the next certification program needs to be and how to get it off the ground. And due to our third-party neutrality and relationship with the university, we have a wide range of testbed equipment from countless different vendors, from new to old, that allow for a really good in-depth interoperability testing that many own independent labs or companies cannot necessarily provide for themselves. So that's kind of a good benefit of the IOL and our relationship with the university. So at the end of all this, as a result, with the more testing, you have more peace of mind that your systems and devices will work and interoperate when it actually gets to the market. All right, so that's the general IOL, but let's go over the reason we're here at this webinar, which is to discuss NVMe testing and Interact and what's changing for the next release, which is version 19.0. So for those who don't know, what is Interact? Interact is our software suite that automates NVMe conformance testing based on the NVMe conformance test plans that the UNH IOL does write in coordination with NVMe organization, based on ratified technical proposals that are coming out of the NVMe technical work group. We have new test plans that are released twice a year, which coincide with new software packages that are also released twice a year, with other ones in between them. So yeah, more on the software release cycle, like I just said, released twice a year, every 6 months. This occurs 2 months prior to the NVMe and NVMe Fabrics plug fests. And in between those are minor revisions that contain bug fixes or maybe some additional tests that didn't quite make it in for pre-testing before the official release. This is why when you look at our own software, you'll see 18.0A, B, C. We use those as minor revisions to fix things that are reported to us as needed. So when testing a new version of the test plan, like for example, the one we have coming out shortly is 19.0A, there are often tests that have not been fully tested by a real hardware device. We can test on emulation drives and some devices that we have here that might not fully support the new features of the new technical proposals. So that's why often there's new bugs found when we put out the first revision, 19.0A or 18A 6 months ago. So as we get more bug reports during the life cycle, we can improve the testing through, we can improve the test scripts so they'll be more reliable throughout their own software life cycle. And then, between that, then we'll do 18 or 19A, B, C, and keep making it better as we go. Something I wanted to say too is that it's worth noting that failure due to a bugged test is not going to prevent certification. That's kind of more open to dialogue for a discussion on what is actually causing the failure. And if we determine that it's the script's fault and not the device's fault, that certainly wouldn't prevent getting listed on the integrators list or anything like that. But more on what is required for certification in a slide or two. Okay, so before we go over test plans and the software further, I just wanted to go over what the end goal of all this development and testing, standards meeting attendance, regression testing, and reservation coordination is all about. And that is to get onto the NVMe Integrators List, which is a product registry for NVMe SSDs or NVMe hosts that they can get on if they pass all the required testing. So what is the required testing? For the most part, if you're just testing an NVMe SSD, you need to make sure that it passes the NVM command set conformance, NVMe transport conformance, whether it's PCIe or some other over fabrics transport. It needs to pass the specific transport interoperability testing, and if it supports NVMe MI, it should also pass that, all the mandatory tests. And then if you are supporting the ZNS command set, which we also offer testing for, then of course it also needs to pass the mandatory tests in that suite as well. Once all those are passed, then we can actually go ahead and list the device on the integrators list, and you, the manufacturer, and your customers can feel confident that the device is compliant to the listed NVMe specification. All right, so talked about the integrators list and the purpose of it. So let's just briefly go over, the steps that get you to that and how those standards are defined. So this is all relevant to interactive software and what it's based on. So if you ever have questions on why a test is failing, it's best to start with a test procedure and understanding the core requirement for what the test is actually trying to test, which is always based on a technical proposal. So anyway, going on from there, the test plans are written in a 3-phase process, going from a technical proposal authorization request to a technical proposal, all the way to an actual test plan. So the first phase is us pretty much pulling the technical proposals that have been ratified in the technical work group, trying to identify which ones are worth writing tests for, which ones are the highest priority, which usually have a cutoff date of around 9 months prior to the start of the process. Since, as an example, we're using technical proposals for the next test plan, which will be version 20, that ratified up until about mid-January. And that's just because the test plan development process takes a few months, making sure it gets all approved and we get through the different phases. So we have to have some sort of hard deadline before we just accept everything. Phase 2 is where we take those initial identified technical proposals and pull out the actual testable items for them, present that to the tech work group for approval, make sure that we're kind of getting good coverage and that everyone is on board with what we say we're going to be testing. It's also a good opportunity for anyone who's going to those meetings to ask us any questions or ask us to cover something else if they think we're missing something or anything, just to say what they want out of the testing to be coming. And then phase 3 is really where the rubber meets the road, because that's when we actually start implementing and writing. So we start writing the test procedures, and at the same time we'll start actually implementing them, just so we can keep up with what's changing. At that time, once we're done with phase 3, we will go ahead and present that to the technical work group and also present it to the NVMe board of directors for final approval. So once that's completed, when the test plan is approved and ratified, we can put it out on our website for public viewing. Let's see. So yeah, when the test plan is ratified and all the implementation is complete, we can put out the new latest version of the software for all IOL NVMe members to pre-test, so that in 2 months' time, they're ready to book their or come to an NVMe Plugfest, which is the first time they can actually get certified with the latest version. So there's a 2-month period, which will have 19.0A, which will allow everyone to get some testing done and see if there's any potential issues that they might identify. And that way, by the time the actual plug test occurs, we'll be able to put out 19.0B to address some of the original or initial concerns. So it'll be a more stable product for the first time to actually certify with version 19.0. Something also important to note is that all new tests, which I think in 19.0 there's around 100 or so, these are all going in as FYI. So there, if you look at any of our test plans, you'll see there's M, mandatory, FYI, OF, FYI. What that means is it's not required to pass in order to test, or in order to become certified. And the reason for that is because since it's so new, we might not have had actual hardware to test it on fully, or that we have passes here on what we can test, but not necessarily enough data to show that the whole industry is ready, or that the test plan is perfect and ready to go, or that the test itself is bug-free. So until we have 5 to 7 independent drives and everything is looking good, we don't want to enforce it or make sure that it is a new requirement automatically. We have to get some data first to make sure that the test tool is vetted properly. And then, so the way that works is once we do get that data and we can move the test from FYI to mandatory with the tech work group approval and board approval, once all the mandatory tests are passed, then the device can be listed on the integrators list. So it's a long process, but make sure that the product at the end is good. And then this slide is kind of just an image describing the process that I just talked about before. You can see on the top track that we write the test cases, then we implement them. And then once they're implemented, then we have to wait for hardware implementations generally to make sure we can actually test them, which is that process I just talked about FYI. So those new tests aren't going to be mandatory in order to get, or required in order to get onto the integrators list. And once we can test against several devices and get good results, passing results, if we get enough of them from different vendors and different types of SSDs, we're then more confident that the tests are stable and that the industry is ready, and that we can move that test from FYI to mandatory. And that process occurs during a new test plan. So it's not going to be, you're not going to have a test that's FYI when 18.0a releases or 19.0a releases, and then suddenly it's going to become mandatory at 19.0c or something like that. It'll only become mandatory at the next entire major revision, which would be 20.0. It's just an example. So on that, there's not going to be major changes to the test plan without oversight, technical working group committee approval, ICC approval, board of directors approval. I mean, of course, we found a typo. We can make a quick edit there, but any major test plan revisions are not going to occur between a minor revision. It'll only be between 19 or 20 or 18 or 19 and that sort of thing. So if you look at the bottom track, I don't have as many details there since I'm not on that side, but you can see that from the third box, you send your devices into the lab for testing, which is either at a plug test or for private reservation. We can test the device independently and discuss results if we see failures, and we can accommodate for firmware updates if possible to get the device into a conformance state without having to send it back or rebook another reservation. And therefore, if we can get all mandatory tests passing, we can move on and get the device listed on the integrators list. So that is just an overview of how this whole program works and how we use Interact in the software to get devices onto the integrators list. From there, I'm going to be handed off to James.
All right, thank you, Carter. All right, so this is just an overview of what is planned to be released for version 19, test plan 19. If you actually want to look on our current website, I suggest you do. We have released the TP19 today, so you can take a look at all the new tests that have been included. But as an overview, these are the TPs that we look to address. So we went over some of the major ones were dispersed namespace, DST enhancements, storage tag masks, and other things like that. One of the other things we're looking to do is a FTP plugfest or FTP proof of concept during the plugfest 19. If you want to know more about what's going into this version 19, please join us on our webinar that we're having on May 2nd. And there'll be more on that and farther on in the slides. All right, so this is all about our GUI or our tool. And as you know, this is what our tool currently looks like, or at least most of you should. It's pretty straightforward. You have all the tests on the left. You select what you want, you hit the run button, and then all the tests start functioning on the side. You can see if they pass, skipped, and at the end, it gives you a running total of what has passed and skipped, and you can view the logs from here. So we have changed it. The major change here was that we went from Java to Python, but we made it so it visibly looks almost identical. We didn't want to mess with anyone too much. So it still functions. Tests are still on the left. You select them. This has been cleaned up a little bit, so it's easier to select tests or subgroups. So we had a new feature there, but it should just be identical. You hit run and all the tests pop out on the right. We do actually have a little demo I will show in a second. All right. So I'll just run through this demo, pause a couple times, and explain some of the changes that have occurred, or that will occur in this new release. Yeah, let's see if I can get this to full screen. It might not let me while I'm presenting. All right. It might be small, but I'll explain what's happening on the screen. So right now, we're in the current managed directory of the tool. So this is where most people will be used to launching the GUI, but a couple things have been added here. We have included this auto runner and LDD. You might be familiar with these. These were previously in LDD scripts. They will remain there in case people were using them, but we figured putting everything in the managed directory would be an easier solution for vendors, so you wouldn't have to move directories to try and run over command line or over the GUI. If we continue on, just going through the LDD, we'll actually launch the new GUI, which it's the same command. It's install and run GUI.sh. It launches up. It has this new thing. So this is the license selector. Basically what it does is it allows you to check out the licenses that you want. The old GUI used to select all of the seats, and it would check out all of the licenses at once, but this meant you had a little overlap with seats and you might not be able to truly check out 10 of each at any point in time. Now you can select the ones that will be applicable. For example, you could select NVM and PCIe if you were just testing an NVMe drive over PCIe and you didn't need your Ethernet license checked out. And then you just hit check select out licenses. This also now happens in AutoRunner and LDD. Those don't have a pop-up like this. They just smartly choose the applicable licenses that are required for that individual test. So let's just see, we go through and select all the licenses and check them out. We get the new GUI. So once again, it looks very similar, has all the licenses checked out. You have all the different devices you can choose that are currently on the system. Over here, we have run, which is the same as the run button, but we have this thing called zip logs, which is one of our support tools, which I'll go into in a little bit, but it is very helpful if you are having issues with any of your tests that you use this zipped logs right here. I'll cover what it actually sends us in a second. Over here, we have a couple things, clearing logs. So if you have a bunch of things saved, refreshing the devices. If you're in a system that was able to hot plug, you could refresh devices and it would repopulate the list that's over here. And then the major thing right here is the configuration tab. Inside this configuration tab, there's this thing called debug or debug mode, which we highly suggest enabling, especially if you're going to send us, if you're having any issues with scripts and you want to send us logs. Debug mode gives us a little bit more information or more information for you on what's actually happening in the script, the actual commands that are being sent across. There are some other things that can be modified in here, like the NSID that's being used, count, which is the number of read and writes for a couple of our tests, and then block size. But the rest of them will auto configure if you don't put anything in here. All right. We have this new thing called links. What's here is it links to the test plans and the test spec. So if you click on either of those, it'll simply, basically it's the equivalent of control-V and copying. So you'll just have a link you can paste online. It'll then open up so you can go to those directly. And then we have this new feature, which is select test. It's been a requested feature from multiple people. Basically what it lets you do is you select one of these, and if you selected like mandatory NVM PCIe, it would select all the mandatory tests that are required to pass the NVMe testing. Same thing with like ZNS or PCIe or over fabrics, or if you wanted to do all the FYI ones, you could select one of those, or if you simply just wanted to deselect all of the tests, you can just deselect all at the bottom. So we'll go over that in a second. Here's just manually selecting them. As you can see now, there is this subgroup category that did not exist in the old GUI. You could click right here and it would select all of the tests that are in 1.1. It's just a little simpler. Hopefully people use it and enjoy it, but it's just an extra little feature. We'll run through a couple tests here. You can see the logs, and I'll go through actually selecting or deselecting and selecting mandatory tests for PCIe. You can see over here, these FYI tests were ignored. They were not selected, and then all the mandatory ones were selected. And then, yep, once again, we can go through deselecting them. We have a dark mode. If that's what something you like, is now enabled. And here's our zipped logs. So the thing with zipped logs, it does save all of the logs that you've had in that run and previous runs. The other information it provides us is the current license you're running with. So if you're having issues with your license, it does give us that file so we can test it internally. And it also gives us information about the state of your system. It does LSPCIe, or LSPCI, LSMod, and LSPLK, just so we can get a little bit more information on what's actually happening to troubleshoot you. You can modify the zipped file if you like, if there's any information you do not want to send to us. And then one of the nice things is in here, instead of having to go up into LDD scripts, you can still run all of the tests in here, so you don't have to be moving around directories. LDD functions the exact same as it did in 18 and previous tests. You just specify your device and the test, and it'll run through fine. Same thing with auto runner. It's the exact same as before. It's now just been included in manage, just so it's a little bit easier for people to look at and use. As you can see, it just will run through multiple tests. And we'll just go into the log directory. It's been reworked a little bit, just so we can see test runs includes previous test runs. So the idea is we didn't want people by accident overwriting old runs, and so it is saved off into a previous directory which has multiple. It'll basically have a timestamp saying this run was on a certain date, and it'll have the logs that were applicable. But if you want to just look at the logs of the last run, you go into this log folder, and it'll have all the previous test runs. I think that's pretty much what this demo covers. So nothing major changed. It should be fairly similar for anyone to use. There's just some nicer creature comforts included in this new release. All right, go on to the next one. Oh, do you mind doing it with your keyboard? All right, so one of the big things that did change was, once again, we're talking about the license checking and the license selector. So we have updated so that this version 19 is going to have the ability to use basically a remote cloud server or a local license server. The nice thing about this is it makes it significantly easier for you guys to manage licenses internally. If you are to use this remote license cloud server, you will have to download a single license file once, and then it'll be basically applicable forever. If you ever need to buy an add-on, we can basically internally update it so that your add-on is included. Or if you're going to just extend at the end of the year, instead of having to download a new file at the end of the year, we can simply just extend the date on the internal server. The second option is the local license server, which is very similar to the first one, but the idea is you have any problems accessing the internet or our internal cloud server, you can basically host your own server. This makes it so you can basically have the same ability. If you have 10 different systems, you can update all of their licenses at once by using this local license server. Basically, we would still have to provide you a new license every year for this one, but it meant you'd only need to put it on one system, and all the other systems would just be able to grab from that one system. And we'll include some documentation on how to use this option when release 19. This option here, the remote cloud server, will be pretty much identical. You won't notice it if you choose that option. You'll place the license file in manage like you would previously, and it shouldn't work basically identically as it does now. We will still support the old style license for a period of time, just so when we release 19, you don't have to worry about immediately trying to get a new license. It will work with the old license for a little bit, and then we'll be transitioning people over from that. Oh, there we go. If you have any support questions, this is something Carter's been working on. This is the IOL INTERACT Support page. It's very helpful. It's kind of a one-stop shop for everything you need. As you can see here, this is what the support page will kind of look like when you pull it up. It's great. It will have redirects to anything applicable. So we'll have release notes will be put up here once they're active. So for 19, you'll be able to see release notes when it happens. We'll have guides, so we can put the guide for how to use the ROM local server on here. And it'll also have like this banner or other things that are really applicable. So like this one's, the newest version just got released, and you can see what the newest version is, and you'll have a direct link to go download the newest version. So if you need any updates on what's happening, this is a great place to look. It also is great because you can reach out to us if you have any questions about licensing, billing. You can send us things through here, or more importantly, at least in my mind, you can send us bug reports, and we can work directly on them. It's a great way for you to be able to report a bug, fill out a summary, send logs. We immediately see it on our side in Jira, and it's a lot easier for both us to track and for you guys to track tickets instead of trying to follow a long email chain. There is a nice feature where you can basically look at my current requests, and it'll show all the tickets that you have open and what state they're in. So if you send 10 tests and we close out 3 of them, you can go out on here and see, oh, it looks like Carter and James were able to fix this bug and it's going to be in the next release, or these ones are still being looked into. So it's a very clean and easy way for everyone to see what's happening. Once again, highly suggest using the zip log state, and you can just include it in the attachments right here. It makes things a lot quicker for us to solve any test script issues if you have them. And also, instead of just reporting bugs, you can also request features in here if you like. We're always welcome to hearing what people would like implemented in the tool. To continue on with what's actually with downloading. So the last one did talk about download. That link is available through JSM if you just click there. If you're trying to reach it outside of that, you might notice Box has not been updated in a while. And that's because Box is no longer being supported by the UNH IOL, and our downloads are now through OneDrive. So if you've been going through Box, I suggest moving to OneDrive. If you don't know where that link is, you can reach out to us. JSM is a great area to reach out to us through, or even if you need to email us, we can get you access to OneDrive. There are still, the old downloads are in an archived folder, so if you still need to access old things, they are still there, but this will be the place where all of our new packages will be uploaded to. And you can, yeah, I would suggest just putting a ticket through JSM if you need access to this. All right. Hopefully this has kind of got everyone acquainted with our new and upcoming releases and some changes. Just a heads up on a couple things that we are going to do. We have the new release of 19.0a. So this package will be released on April 5th. So look forward to that on OneDrive. It'll come out on JSM, a new banner. You'll be able to see it, download it, and start testing. You can currently look at the new test plan for 19 if you'd like. It's on our website as of today, so please take a look. And if you have any questions or comments, please reach out. And of course, we'll be going and having a Plugfest on May 2nd, or a webinar on May 2nd for the Plugfest. So if you want more information about the TPs that are going in or ECNs, what our plan is for things, that's a great area to get a little bit more information. And that'll be covering the Plugfest that are happening in June. Hopefully in person. We would like to see everyone, so please reach out. I think we can drop a poll.
Yep,
Perfect.
pull up.
So if you wouldn't mind filling that out so we can just base what we see for the Plugfest, that'd be very helpful. I'll give that just a little bit of time.
Yeah, we can just let that run while we go to the next one.
Okay, yeah, we can go to the next slide.
Just the end.
Yeah, so nothing too major here. We just want to keep everyone up to date with what our plan is. If you guys have questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A, and we can respond. If you need to talk to the IOL about sales, you can reach out to Matt. His email, his number is right here. And then if you have just more questions after this webinar that you think of, JSM is a great area to reach out to us with.
Yeah, or just the regular NVMe lab at IOL.unh.edu that many of you already know that is always going to be up and working for us. So let's see. So looking through the questions, I see one person was asking about the host OS that someone was asking about what our host OS is going to be, and right now it is still Ubuntu 20.04. But we have been testing on Rocky Linux, and which is what is replacing CentOS. So yeah, we're getting good results there. So we haven't officially supported it yet, but we're seeing good results in the possibility to do that. So if you need to use that sort of operating system, let us know. We can get you some more experimental builds that might have some unexpected results, but it will be just from less testing is all. But we can accommodate for that.
And just a reminder that we are also using kernel 5.10.0 on these releases. So just make sure you're running the correct kernel if possible, just so we don't see any unexpected errors.
All right, another question is the ZNS license needed to, do you need to purchase that or does it come with NVMe? So the way that works is generally it is an add-on. So we're selling it with the admin command set, and then either you get NVM command set or ZNS command set. So it's really admin plus one is included in the base rate. And then if there's another one you need, then that goes for an additional fee. That you can reach out to this email, Matt Coppola. He can give you more information on that. Another question. I've not seen every test group in case under they might not be updated in the test plan. Is there a place to view details of each test group and its cases? I think that's asking about if you can see them in the test plan. The main place to actually see the details about the test plan or about the test cases is the test plan. So if you have questions that aren't quite being answered in the test plan document or the discussion sections there, then you can just reach out to us through email or JSM. And another question is, will we get a copy of the webinar to watch again? That is, yes, this is being recorded. So this will be posted probably to our UNH IOL YouTube channel. I think that's how it's gone before. So yes, you will be able to watch this once that's all done and set up. Someone else asked, most of the NVMe MI tests are FYI. Do you have a timeline of when they will turn mandatory? That is a good question. I don't necessarily have a timeline. It's really dependent on the devices and what we get in. We can go through them and see how many passes or failures we're getting. I know we have had a couple devices in the past few months going through them and testing them, but at least for TP 18 transitioning into TP or test plan 18 into test plan 19, there's not status changes at this point. And then there's another question, what are plans to maintain or advance LaCroix and Viavi support for UNH test suites? That's a good question too. So we're actually looking to implement more tests in our own PC edition Interact and rely less and less on external analyzers. NVMe MI is going to stay on the LaCroix analyzer at this point, and that is right now the only analyzers that we're using for the official NVMe organization testing, so just LaCroix. But we're looking to find ways to implement tests in our own stack so we don't have to have such a split source in the future. So we will continue to, if we get bug requests and stuff for 18 and 19, we can support those, but we're hoping to rely less and less on them as we go forward just to keep it simpler. Someone asked a price for the test package. That one I'll refer to Matt. You should reach out to Matt Coppola to talk about any pricing or anything of that sort, because there's multiple ways to purchase the software or the testing. So it's not always necessarily a one simple answer. It just depends on your needs, really. There's two more questions I'm seeing. Someone's, how can I get access to JSM, the Jira Service Management Interact Support portal? For that, I think I've added a couple people as we've been going, which generally is if I get a very big email and a very long, many questions, I'm like, okay, it's time to transition over this. We're learning about it as we go as well. So if you're interested in doing this, and eventually you will get added through osmosis as we go, but if you want to get on it sooner rather than later, you can just send an email to NVMe Lab or to Matt or any of us, and I can get you added as soon as possible. And then will the plug test be in person? That is still, we want to do it in person. It's been, like James said, it's been a while, and I would love to do it in person, just a matter of preference and who can come and how many people are registering and that sort of thing. Let's see. I think that is it. Unless I'm missing anything else. I think that's it. So if there's any other questions, speak now. Oh, we got one. Can we use the LaCroix Z4 Gen 4 exercises to run any spec of MI? Right now, I believe if you were to download the latest package, it is from 1.0 and 1.1. The LaCroix or the MI scripts are written. Sorry, the MI test procedures are written by the UNH IOL, but they are implemented by LaCroix. So if you're wanting to know about when 1.2 versions will come out, you should reach out to Talman LaCroix at that point. But you should be, in theory, be able to do any spec that they support. For example, we are using the Z416 right now for our MI testing. So if that's what you have, then you're in good shape there. And we've got another question. Are we using SAMBlaze for target testing or real targets?
So we have used the SAMBlaze before to do some testing for over fabrics, both as a target and initiator, mostly for interoperability, as it can emulate multiple targets or multiple initiators at the same time. But that's pretty much all SAMBlaze is being used for, is just over fabrics, targets, and initiators.
All right. I think if there's, oh, no, every time I say that. Do we need to upgrade LaCroix exercise in Gen 5 to test MI 1.2 or any future spec? I cannot honestly say exactly the right answer for that one. I would assume not, but I don't know enough to really give you an honest answer, so I don't want to misguide anybody.
Yeah, I would reach out to Teledyne LaCroix themselves for that, just to
Right.
make sure they're on the same page.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything wrong definitively. Do we consider SAMBlaze and meet over fabrics target conformant?
We haven't run testing on that in a while. If you want to reach out to us, we can look into that, but I couldn't tell you an answer right now for SAMBlaze over fabric target conformance. It would be something we'd have to experiment with a little bit more. It's mostly used for interoperability.
Will FC be included in the June Plugfest? If people are testing for it or wish for testing, then yes. Just a matter of who is coming for attendees and what they wish to test on. All right, I think at this point, if there's further questions, feel free to reach out to either Matt or ourselves or through our website or through our regular NVMe Lab email address. But otherwise, just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. I hope it was informative for everybody. And yeah, if you have any more questions, just reach out and we'll get back to you. Thank you, everybody.